Today we've got representatives from Daimler Truck UK, and we've also got a representative from Remit Training to celebrate the partnership between this and our new venture here in the centre of Derby. Not a lot of people know. I found this out quite recently. Daimler Truck did invent the first ever truck in 1896, so 130 years ago. And obviously they've been innovators ever since that, to the latest one that we probably can see behind. This is the e-Actros 600, which is the truck of the year 2025. So we've got the old mixes with the new, which is always great to see. Training that's come from right the early 80s right the way to the cutting edge and technology breakthroughs that we've got at the moment. On our panel today, we have got representatives from Daimler and Remit. We'll get them to introduce themselves.
I'll start. My name's Stuart Jeggo. I am the Sales and Marketing Director of Daimler Truck UK.
My name is Richard Skidmore. I'm the Customer Service and Parts Director at Daimler Truck UK.
My name is Heiko Selzam, and I'm the Managing Director for Daimler Trucks in the United Kingdom.
I'm Stuart Pittock. I'm the CEO of Remit Training, obviously the training partnership of this venture.
My name's Darryl. I'm the Commercial Director of Remit and also your host today. So welcome everybody to Great Northern Classics here over in Derby. Question to each and every one of you. What is your favourite truck and why?
Who wants to go first?
Stuart, we'll start with everyone on there, yes.
Well, quite simply, it's the truck that you're sitting in front of. The new e-Actros 600. Groundbreaking, really, when you look at it. Newly crowned International Truck of the Year for 2025 at the Hanover Show and the IAA in September 25. It's 600 kilowatts of usable battery technology that are going to get us over 500 kilometers on a single charge. And we look at it now, and that looked like a pipe dream a long time ago. And quite quickly it's come to become a reality, as you can see with the truck behind you. And for me, it's going to be the future of what trucking looks like. So a fantastic truck.
Thank you.
From my perspective, my favourite truck, there's a few of them, but I think the one I picked out is the Arox SLT heavy hauler. From my perspective, it uses our M473 engine, so similar to some of our other vehicles, but in terms of the size, up to 250 tonnes gross vehicle weight. But for me, it's the perfect example of a truck working well, large infrastructure projects, hauling wind farms, etc., up our motorways. But it only does that if it's got the full support of technicians, workshops, and a full team around them to be able to pull these fantastic sort of jobs off. And so the Arox SLT for me is my favourite truck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For me, it's the Iconic. The Iconic is a vehicle that has been introduced in '98, and now for me it is 27 years of a unique cab and vehicle concept and design. For me, it's the Swiss tool of trucking when it comes to be it city distribution, be it special vehicles, emergency vehicles, firefighting vehicles, ground support equipment used on airports, waste management. It's unique because I think it combines, everything and can serve most of our customers in various customer segments. But unique is for me the cab design with the enhanced safety features, and I think it makes it one of the safest trucks on the road in the UK. That's the reason for me.
Okay, I'm going to give you a slightly crazy answer, because for me, we opened our first training academy in 2017 when standards come along. And the FE sector doesn't get money from government for training centres or trucks, rigs, consumables, or anything like that. So I remember our first truck was an orange truck, and I didn't particularly like this orange truck. So I always really liked a white truck or a red truck, and trucks with the latest technology on it that get the apprentices a bit excited about what they can learn and what they're going to be able to practice on in a training academy, that particularly if they're in year one or they're a new apprentice, they might not get that exposure to practice in the workplace initially. So for me, it's whatever creates a really nice environment inside our training academy that the apprentices walk through the door and go, wow, I like that. So I'm not going to pick a particular truck for that reason.
All right, I have one. I bought an Artigo many moons ago, 2005 I think it was. And when I first got it, it was a recovery truck that I used to use. It was real cutting edge then. It really brought everything, common rail, everything was easy, quite a lot of power out of a small engine. It was like driving a car. It is still going now, so that's 27 years old I think it is. And it still looks exactly the same. And as far as I can remember, it's not had any work on it. And it's just clicked over around about 1.5 million kilometres. So the longevity of the product, the longevity of the trucks and everything, I think is paramount and second to none. Certainly from personal experience that we've had that. So yeah, so hopefully the one that we see behind us, hopefully that can see 1.5 million clicks or whatever we do. But yeah, that was my favourite. Okay. First question, a question for Richard and Sue to answer this one, if you don't mind. How does the partnership address the skills gap within the HGV sector? What are Daimler Truck and Remit doing to support the growing need for more qualified technicians?
I'll go first.
Okay, so Remit Training's journey in the automotive sector, our heritage in automotive goes back 40 years from the original Remit to the second rendition of Remit. And the two significant parts of our journey is going from the original framework training programs to when government brought in standards in 2017 and the levy was introduced. And then we've seen a big difference in what the training needs to consist of. So to deliver automotive and particularly HGV training programs, you have to have training academies. You cannot any longer just go out and deliver in the workplace. So for us, going back as far as 2017 when we opened our first academy, it was a bit of a trial and error. What was that academy going to consist of? What did we need in the way of HGV trucks? What was the market size going to be for HGV and where was the market going to go? It's quite difficult to predict where the market's going to go from a training perspective. And then if we fast forward now to 2025, and we look at the start of our partnership with Daimler now, we're operating now out of 7 training academies. 5 of those are Remit centres, and 2 of them we operate for clients. So we've got a fair bit of experience now for what does a training academy need to look like. And I think the really exciting part about the partnership with Daimler is we've got lots of experience now for how do you get the best training academies. This academy is our biggest academy that we've ever set up. And I actually think it's going to be our best academy. We only opened a week ago, so there's a little bit more to get us ready for completion. But the real great part about the partnership is I mentioned earlier that government don't support the FE sector with investment in training centres or trucks or rigs or tooling, and the FE sector has gone through a whole transition over time of lots of providers moving away from being able to deliver in this sector to those that can really specialise in it. And I think the perfect partnership is you guys are super excited about what this can bring to your future workforce and your future talent. So it's in your interest to get this right with us. So it means our apprentices and your apprentices are going to get access to the latest technology, the latest trucks, really good tooling, a really good environment to learn in, and it's going to be a bright, vibrant experience. So you can probably tell I'm super excited around the partnership and how we get this right for the network and what value it can add to the network.
Absolutely. From a Daimler Truck perspective, I think obviously the partnership for us is absolutely pivotal in terms of what we can add, again, to address that shortage. I think for me, there are 2 key areas that we really, as a manufacturer, really need to push on. And they are 2 areas, I guess, communication being one of them and also education the second. Because the first thing to mention is, you mentioned skills gap, etc. And you mentioned, obviously, we know there is a shortfall of various workers in the automotive sector. For us, it's very important to communicate, to educate, but mainly to communicate from a manufacturer perspective, just the different options that are available in the automotive sector, and that it is a really vibrant and there are so many opportunities available in the sector. So for us, I think the first thing to do is to obviously communicate that. You know, in the automotive sector, there are many different things that our technicians, our apprentices can move on to do next. It's not a dead end street. And at the moment, as the industry sits at the moment, there are becoming, because of the change we see more opportunities arising as we go. So for me, an apprenticeship in the automotive sector is one of the most, I guess, interesting and engaging opportunities you could have. And it's important that the manufacturers communicate that to kids, to children, to adults, etc., people coming through who might want to be apprentices. And then secondly, when we pique their interest, to have that education path and that really clear and supportive path through the apprenticeship scheme and beyond, so that people can understand, okay, if I come into this sector, what is my path? Okay, I understand my path. I know it's going to be engaging. I know it's going to be exciting, but it's also going to be clear that I've got the opportunity to really succeed in that sector. So that's what I mean in terms of education, but also that communication as a manufacturer. That's where we need to support Remit to be able to really make a difference.
I think the other part, just to add to it as well, that if you look at I've been in remit training for 12 years now, and if I look back on what was the automotive sector and the attraction 12 years ago versus now, it's hugely different. So you'll go around our training academies and you'll see females working on HGV apprenticeships. That was quite rare 12 years ago. But as technology's changed and the equipment and resources you can use in the sector, females really, they have a great experience working in the HGV sector. And if you look at the career path, we're always quite energised at what their career potential is at the end of an apprenticeship programme and what they can go on to do. So I think now, if you look back and you see where the sector is now, it's hugely different. It's not the industry that you would have seen that is associated with being underneath the truck covered in oil. It is very different now as a sector, and I think it's an exciting sector to be in, and it's got lots of career opportunities for people that possibly 12 years ago wasn't really as evident. And I know when we can put an advert out for an apprenticeship and we get over 24,000 people apply for our apprenticeship programs, and that will sort of show you the change in the sector now for people wanting to come into the automotive and particularly HGV sector to do apprenticeships and wider training.
Thank you both. Next question. This one's to all of you. Get your input with this one. Society impact. How does the training and apprenticeship opportunity help to create jobs and support economic growth? What difference do you make? Now, I'll just add a little bit to this because obviously we went through the pandemic a few years ago, which highlighted areas for logistics that we got a major shortfall, and we were quite reliant on the HGV side of it to keep the countries, or not just England, but keep everywhere else going. It highlighted areas of skills gaps, which is what we're coming up to now. We've talked about it. Richard's talked about it before. We always know that attraction is a big thing for anything that we do, for anything apprenticeship wise. But listening and looking at what I've seen with the Daimler Truck UK with some of the apprentices, I think it's quite a longevity you're looking for to keep them in the business, a natural progression to start them from right to apprentices, right the way to, some people call it cradle to grave. I'm not quite so much as that, but they keep them in the business right the way up to the top. I went to, I think it was I think it was Rigor down in Mercedes-Benz down in Missouri for some of their first year apprentices. Got chatting to some of the techs and mentors. 20, 30 years they've been working for Daimler. So that's a testament really to what you're doing. But going back to the question, sorry, I'm going off topic, but what difference do you make?
Do you mind if I jump in?
You can, yeah, absolutely, sure.
You mentioned COVID. I think that's a really important topic to bring up, because I look back now, and before I joined the trucking world some 15 years ago, it sort of goes unnoticed, really, I think. And in the COVID period, it became hugely noticed that all the workshops were open, all the trucks were on the road. It was really important. I mean, at that particular time, I was supporting our key account fleets, And it was one of the busiest times I think I've ever had working for Daimler, on the basis that we had to keep trucks on the road. Toilet rolls were running out. We had to make sure that those trucks were on the road delivering toilet rolls around the country. And it wasn't just toilet rolls, it was the only thing that really was operating at that particular time, more than it was prior to the pandemic. And it just went berserk really from that particular time. So I think people didn't really recognise that beforehand, and afterwards I think it's sort of gained a bit of gravitas about how it actually kept the country moving.
Yeah. I mean, if I may add to what Stuart said, I believe the difference we make is, first of all, we address a topic, and it's a topic which is a shortage of skilled workers. Yeah, and this is the main purpose of that program. On the other side, I believe with our program, we promote innovation, and innovation in the form, that I call it the next generation of workers, technicians. They are ready then, to deal with the sort of advanced technology that comes along, with the E600, the digitization, the iPhone on wheels, we talked about. Another important topic for me is where we make a difference, I think. I call it we enhance diversity. And enhance diversity, I mean that industry, and Sue mentioned it before, is all of a sudden attracting, people from a completely different background, with the different knowledge and expertise, and we bring that together in the industry. And last but not least, I think for me, where we make a difference, it is safety. Because whatever we do, operating a heavy goods vehicle on a British road, we need to make sure that the vehicle is safe and it works and it functions and it's repaired and maintained to the highest standards. And at least from my perspective, there with that program, we make a real big difference too.
Yeah, I agree, guys. And just to add just quickly, because you mentioned previously regarding the technicians, and some of our technicians in our network have been there for 30 years, 35 years, and I know a few of them. We run a thing called the Technical Excellence Guild, which this badge is part of there. I'm sort of pretending to be part of it, but actually it's filled of the best technicians that we have in our network. And some of those technicians, in my opinion, the reason why we still have them and why they still love going to work every day is because they make a difference. And I've worked in a number of different industries, and actually Heiko alluded to it, but frankly, I am one of those people who have worked in automotive industry in the past, but also training and hospitality and various other industries. And I can honestly say that the industries that I've worked in, only the automotive industry is one where you can trace back the difference that you make every day to those customers, to the economy, to your boss, to yourself, to your family, etc. You can very much go home and say, this is the difference I made today. I got that truck back on the road and it delivered that, and the customer was happy. And it's really, in some ways, it's really clear to see the difference you make. But I think that's part of the reason as to why we do retain a lot of staff in our dealer network and in our teams, because we can really feel that difference. Because ultimately, whilst you also go to work to earn money and you go work to have a career, if you make a difference while you're at work, I think for me that's one of the key reasons for job satisfaction.
And I think just a final part to add from a training perspective. I think my job is to look at, if there's a skill shortage, how do we help employers so that you get the right training that's timely. I'll give a small example. The construction industry at the moment needs to build 1.5 million houses, and there's not enough people to build the houses. So the training sector in construction has got to go from something like 3 to 4 years down to a much, much faster pace of training to be able to get people that can then build the houses. So we're looking at things like, how do we make sure that we can condense some of the training so that you can get skilled people quicker, but without compromising on anything to do with safety. Yeah. So how do we still make sure that an apprentice can come out at the end of the program and they're as qualified as what they are if they do 3 years, but if they do 2 years. So I think our job is to work with industry, work with government, look at what the training needs to look like and be flexible enough to give industry what it needs, so that we don't feel when things like Brexit changed or COVID hit us that there's a skill shortage and everybody's just trying to compete with everybody on resource. How can we try and skill people and train them faster so that you've got the right resource for your industry, so that we can supply the resource for the industry? So I think for us, we play a significant role in making sure that we can meet the needs of industry in a flexible enough way.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. Next question. I think we've touched a little bit on this as well. What does the future of the truck industry, obviously, the new truck that we've got behind us, what does the future of the truck industry look like, and how can apprenticeships continue to impact and support in the future?
I mean, I can partially, or I'm happy to answer this one, maybe the first one. To begin with, the future of the trucking industry, quite often we talk about 3 mega trends. The first one is, I call it battery electric or sustainability. Yeah, we are, progressing quite fast with the latest battery technology to decarbonize road freight transport. That's the first big mega trend. The second one is autonomous driving. Yeah, and maybe, a fully autonomous truck is maybe still a few years, ahead of us, the implementation. But, what we already see is I call it a gradual implementation of, I call it autonomous features that, on the one side support the driver, make the driver life easier, and enhance safety as well. Yeah. The third one is, I mentioned it before, the iPhone on wheels, the software-defined vehicle architecture, where software and mechanics, come closer. We are going to implement a new truck operating system, which is the basis, frankly speaking, to add on additional electronic features, but also to provide, more data, better data to our sort of customers and operators, which is the basis for, I would say, a better decision making, but also an optimized route planning. So the point is, future trends, trucking industry, I see these 3, in summary: electrification or sustainability, autonomous driving, and the software-defined vehicle architecture. Yeah.
I think,
go on, Steve, go on.
I think just to add to it, from a training perspective, when you watch technology change over a period of time, how do we change as technology is evolving? So in one of our Derby academies, which is the first one, we've just put what I call the figment of the imagination electric studio. It might sound a bit crazy, but what is that all about? Lots of things that go wrong on vehicles now is around technology or electrics. So how can we make sure that we've got a learning environment where if you don't get to practice electrics as much as what you possibly might like to as an apprentice, how can we create the environment that you can get good access to the electrics and the technology in a way that you can have a great learning experience and really get your head around those changes in technology and make the learning experience quite creative. So we're looking at all sorts of varieties of things to enhance that training over a period of time. And I mentioned earlier, we opened our first training centre in 2017 when standards come in. But if I look back now from what the training academies needed to look like in 2017 to what they need to look like now when you've got electric vehicles and all sorts of changes coming, I think our job is to talk to our customers and make sure that we can keep changing what we need to put in front of apprentices and the training that we offer so that they can be really useful back in the workplace.
I don't mind, Darryl.
I think to add to what you've both said, certainly from a sales side, it's a big change really. When you talk about the electric drivetrain, a lot of people, when they come to selling the trucks and thinking about trucks, they think about big engines, noisy vehicles, etc. It's a completely different environment in that vehicle now to what it was. And I think it's only going to continue to change in that direction. But that is hard. We have sales execs in our network and across the country and other manufacturers that have had 25 years of selling diesel vehicles. Now they've got to really start thinking about electrification of vehicles. You know, in the future they're talking about hydrogen. That's a way off at this moment in time, but it's a very different mindset about how you sell a vehicle or what the future looks like from the environment of the vehicles and what they do. And it's exciting. It's challenging, as you just rightly said, you know, but it is exciting in the way that, and the direction of travel, what that looks like. And it's here now. It's not, we talk about the future, you're sitting in front of one. We're sitting in front of one, and the future is now to a certain extent.
Just to add just quickly, guys, and then obviously you mentioned the word change a lot. I think when it comes to the apprentices themselves, and you mentioned how they can contribute, etc. It's clear that we're going through a period of unprecedented change in the automotive industry, specifically as well the logistics industry. We know that from a perspective of drivetrain, but also frankly from a perspective of customer service. There are so many technologies we've never used before that are now being integrated into our offering. So for me, the key thing to mention really at this point is that whilst apprentices will also be part of the change, in some cases they will be the change. These guys are coming from, you know, especially the younger apprentices, they're coming from a different background to the one I had, and they're coming from a different upbringing from a technological perspective that I had. And the ideas and the expectations of customers are very different. So yeah, like I said previously, I think whilst they will definitely be a huge part of the change coming through, it's a clear direction from Daimler, especially to take into account their feedback, to take into account their expertise, etc., and really to drive that change themselves. And I think that's a huge opportunity and one that we've never had before.
I agree. All your apprentices now are your future technicians as you progress, as we've said about longevity in it. And what you put in right at the base, if you get the fundamentals right, it's only going to grow and grow and grow.
But Darryl, also, I mean, to be honest, our apprentices now are our future managing directors. Yeah. So we need them to really be engaged in that period of time and then drive the change moving forward. Yeah.
Embrace everything that we've got, and as well as the other colleagues that you've got working in there that have been working for 30 or 40 years have got to retrain. We look at it on the commercial side. We do alternate courses for doing the EV, for upskilling people for EV, and hydrogen is coming through now. It'll be with us before. Who'd have thought 20 years ago that you'd be sitting in front of one of these that's completely electric and that can do 500 kilometres on a charged battery, which is like mind-blowing. But yeah.
I think the other thing as well, that we have a duty of care to get right as an industry. If the industry sold lots of trucks during COVID as an example, and then they all come with service packages and then they all have to be maintained, and then the country has to deal with the economic factors that go on when you run businesses, and then you layer in your skill shortage to that. I think our job is to make sure, if you pick up on Heiko's point of we need to do everything safely, as an industry, you don't want people that are not trained appropriately, and you don't want to be cutting corners with taking somebody that is, I think the worst example I've heard is somebody that did a 3-day course that then repaired some brakes on a minibus that had children on it. And I don't need to tell you probably what happened to that minibus, but it is an industry we have to make sure everyone's safe in automotive. So I think you've got government with their responsibility for what they need to influence in the automotive sector for training. Then you've got the FE sector for what part it needs to play. And then you've got the industry itself on how it embraces the training, so that all three elements need to come together to make sure that the training really meets the need of industry, and everything's done well, safely, with a good level of customer service, with all the change that's coming down the track at the same time.
It's a really good point. That customer service is massive for my side of the business. If the apprentice team, if the technician teams, if everybody in the customer service and parts doesn't do their part, that truck doesn't get back on the road. That truck doesn't deliver your parcels that you order for the next day delivery, etc. It just doesn't happen. So we're really passionate about making sure we have that next level coming through all the time on the trucks that we know are going to be the future of what it looks like. If we get it right now and continue to get it right and continue to change with the industry, then it's only beneficial for the customer base, as well as then you said earlier about making a difference. That's going to make a huge amount of difference right now.
Yeah, if I may add, Darryl, you sometimes get questioned as an MD of a company, why do you have to invest so much into training. And I would boil it down to 4 key statements. First of all, Sue mentioned it, I mentioned it, safety. Yeah, when the vehicle gets repaired or maintained, it needs to be to the highest standard. Number 2, for me important, and there I put myself into the shoes of a customer, I would say efficiency. Yeah, because well-trained technicians will, in my opinion, diagnose issues in trucks faster and get the trucks faster back onto the road. You know, we need to ensure, and that's the 3rd element, I call it compliance, you know, that our guys and girls are trained and qualified, you know, to the latest standards. They are up to date. And now talking about our workforce, our future workforce, our technicians, our apprentices, for me, we need to invest into training also because it is, I call it employee satisfaction. You know, when they are trained and qualified, I think we value their skills. That's important. And we also give them a boost when it comes to, I would say, employability within the CV industry. That's quite a cool thing, isn't it? To be a trained, qualified, you know, technician. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Huh?
What are the roadblocks for manufacturers and independent training providers around government funding? And with additional support, how can we elevate the apprenticeship programme?
Gosh, shall I go first? And I'll give these guys some time to think about that. So I spend quite a lot of my time talking to people like Department for Transport, Road Haulage Association, all different entities that are interested in the automotive sector. And whether we like it or not, this industry needs training academies to be able to deliver top quality training. So I think the part that government can help with is making sure that the FE sector gets the support for the investment on the training centres. A business like ours, Remit Training, we've invested over 6 million of our own money to get our centres where they are. Ideally, what would I like to service the whole of the country? I would have 9 across the country, but in geographical areas where apprentices can get to a little bit easier. So that if you've got some of the rest of the sector, an SME as an example, that they can get to a place without having to go the length and breadth of the country. So I think government can play their part to help the sector, and they can help support the wider FE sector to make sure that it doesn't have to be just providers like us that can find that money to invest, because there's lots of people that can't. And then I think if you look at apprenticeships and the value that they had to manufacturers, and Heiko, we were talking about this earlier, about what does each manufacturer have for the training. I think we all know that the days of just seeing training as an add-on event to what you do in a business, whereas now it's like our people are a critical asset outside of products. So I think making sure it's the appropriate training for our country is absolutely key. And to do that, the partnerships across the manufacturers, and making sure that how do we balance the investment to what we put in to what a manufacturer puts in, and then how do you get the sweet spot for that partnership is really important, I think, to make sure that it works for both entities.
Not necessarily a direct answer in terms of investment, because I think many times when we talk about government assistance, we always sort of turn to then the investment side, and it's a key part. From my perspective, I think what the government could absolutely do and focus on to be able to improve things from a logistics perspective, also from a training perspective, is to invest time to talk to the SMMT and talk to Logistics UK, talk to the manufacturers, and also talk to our customers, the logistics hauliers, etc., and the dealers in the network. Because many of their challenges, and we see huge challenges for especially our customers at the end of the day at the moment, when you look at national insurance, etc., and various challenges that they're having. The country doesn't work unless the logistics industry does, and therefore I think that engagement in time, as well as the engagement and investment that you mentioned, Sue, is absolutely key. And it's wonderful because it doesn't cost anything from their perspective. But I think that would give them valuable insights to be able to then find additional areas to be able to improve as well.
Message for you, Richard, again.
Oh, for me.
This one, it's had to be highlighted.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's a highlighted question. What message do you have to parents of prospective apprentices?
To parents of prospective apprentices, and I suppose I might be one of those, I guess, at some point. My son's 8, but you never know, these time goes fast, and I guess at some point that could be the case. But I think it's a really key thing, because I think from an apprentice perspective, gone are the days when you're handed a spanner and told to go and do something and just left to get on with it. From an apprentice perspective, we now have an extremely professional structure across different manufacturers, including Remit, obviously, as being a key one on that. But in terms of the 2 key statements I want to make, the first one is around support, and the second one is around opportunity. Because, and I mentioned it previously with regard to the opportunities available, but I think if I was talking to parents of apprentices, the opportunities of an apprentice at the moment, are completely endless in the automotive industry. We have many employees working at our head office who were originally apprentices, and there is a huge opportunity to move your career in whatever which way you might want to after that apprentice scheme. So I think that opportunity for your children is absolutely there, but I think the other key thing is support. The apprenticeship schemes and the support given from Daimler Truck and our partners in the dealer network, and our partners obviously from a Remit perspective, that support is not only endless, but it is also tailored to the individual. Some learners don't want too much support, they're happy to get on with it themselves. Some need a lot of pastoral support, and all is available. Because it's tough when you leave, in some cases when you leave home for the first time and you're away from your parents for the first time, it's sometimes a bit of a strange environment. So we're committed to provide that support. One of the things we're also really proud of is the mentoring that happens in our dealer network, because it's a very different message to say, somebody's going to be mentoring you, to saying that David from Motors, who has 35 years experience, is an extremely nice guy, can meet the parents, etc. And then there's a lot more support given and a lot more sort of satisfaction given when you have that relationship with those mentors. And Remit and Daimler Truck as well are committed to supporting our mentors to be able to provide the best support we can into those apprentices. So, yeah, the main message is as a reiteration, the main message is to those parents is if your child or your children are considering becoming an apprentice, those opportunities are huge, and we'll absolutely support them to make the most of it.
Yeah, I'll bring Sue in on this about here at Remit, the learner is the heart. It's everything that we do. It's all around there, and what we do for them. And just to bring Sue and explain what we actually do for support-wise while they're on the programme, while they're on the 3-year programme, because it's quite a lot, as you've said, Richard. They're coming at 17, 18, never been away from home, never been coming to a strange sort of city. So we've got a lot of support in there. But I'll let Sue tell you all around about that.
Yeah. And sorry for interrupting. So if I may add, and if you allow, two more things to what Richard basically would say to a parent. The opportunity is definitely a very good one. I would say a stable and secure career development as well. Yeah? It's not only about opportunities, maybe it's also about stability and security. What a lot of people do not talk about is, I call it the competitive salary, if I'm really honest. As a truck technician, you can really earn a competitive amount of money, and I think that's equally attractive and important. And as an add-on, to the support and to the opportunity piece, if I'm really honest. And I think you develop a skill set today which is in high demand tomorrow. Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, I think the world's moved on. If I go back and look at what was available to me, I did a postgrad degree. Would I recommend that to my family now? I think for some people that may be appropriate, but for a whole section of our country to be able to earn why they learn, and apprenticeships now, government have put, and employers and the sort of FE sector have invested a lot of time and effort to improve the brand of apprenticeships, where you sort of got from a level 2 apprenticeship up to a level 7, I think it is, apprenticeship. So they're a really good career path. And if you take the HGV industry, you're going to do your apprenticeship. I would probably say 99% of times people stay with that employer unless there's a reason why they want to move on, but they've got a career for life at that point if they want it. They've got a trade, They're not walking out with a whole load of debt that you've racked up in a university program. So I always personally recommend to my own family now that if there's an apprenticeship that they can do, and it gives them a job, it gives them life skills, they're employable. I think it's so different now than what it was 10 years ago to do an apprenticeship. I think the part, Darryl, that you're alluding to that we've done different as a business more recently is you might have your technical trainer, and I think for a parent, we do open days so the parents can come round our training academies and have a look at the environment, because I think you would go and have a look at a university place, come and have a look at where your son and daughter is going to do an apprenticeship. And then when you see an exciting academy like this one with the facilities and everything that's the apprentices is going to get access to in their training, I think that helps convince parents that it is a good career path. But the second part we do, and picking up, Richard, on when you do a residential course that we do and they come away, 16, 17, 18-year-old, first time they come away from home, they learn such great life skills. But we also have what we call an emotional support coach. So that emotional support coach is not their technical tutor. It is somebody that is trained and is going to be there for them to help them with anything that it may create anxiety for, to be away from home first time. They've got access to somebody all the time, not just when they're in the training academy. If they phone one of our emotional support coaches, they'll help them with anything. So they have two coaches, so their technical trainer and their emotional support coach. And we did that based on some research looking at other, lots of OECD countries compete for English, maths and science. And the number one country at the time, when we looked at the research, put emotional support coaches in. So we decided to do that, and the difference it made was huge, absolutely huge, because the technical trainers are really good at teaching all the technical stuff. I probably wouldn't say they're the best to put an arm around an apprentice that may be a little bit anxious, or you've got, I remember going into one of our academies when I walked in and half the group was female. It's their first block away from home. And they want somebody that can put them at ease really quickly. The tutor sort of focused on, come on, you're going to do your block. And the emotional support coach was absolutely superb at putting them at ease, explaining everything, making sure they feel really comfortable. And I think I've been doing some work with government on the new foundation apprenticeship, which is going to be the bridge between leaving school and coming onto a shorter apprenticeship, so that apprentices can sort of make a bit of a decision before they commit to, say, a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship program. And I know government thinking is really looking at this piece of work around emotional support coaches, and could it then really help people transition from the school system to the workplace. And I think an example that I probably won't forget that Department for Education gave at the time was, if you're at school, you know when to go to the toilet because the bell rings. If you come into work is very, very different. So how can somebody help you transition with those resilient skills and what you need to go into the workplace to be safe and have a good experience? And I think an apprenticeship is fantastic for that.
Can I add one thing? I'm a parent, and I'd love nothing more than my 2 children to come into this industry. I think the truck industry is a special industry. It's my favourite of the automotives, and my son now wants to come into the truck mechanic apprentice side, and the fact that I want him to do that means a lot. I think it shows a lot actually as a parent, that if I'm happy doing what I'm doing and happy for him and her to join this, this industry, the automotive industry, then it says a lot to all the parents out there. I think that actually it's a really good industry for young people or anybody to join actually.
The learners at the heart of everything that we do. Their experience is fundamental to shape their career. How do we ensure that the learners are having the right experience on a 3-year program?
Yeah, maybe I start with that if that's okay, because 28 years ago I was an apprentice myself, and I went through that school of life, as Sue said, and it was a successful one. But I think there are some key prerequisites in order to make it successful. For me, it was extremely important to know and to understand you know, what is the curriculum, what's the plan, you know, and what are the areas that will be covered. That's important, number one. Number two, Sue mentioned it as well. I had to smile. It was on the one side, you know, experienced personnel that trains and qualifies me, but that is also able to act as a mentor if possible, yeah, or to have that mentorship support. The third one was for me, I call it hands-on experience. You know, there's a lot about e-learnings and these sort of things. I gained most out of it when I had, you know, the truck in front of me and when I had the tools, you know, in my hands. This is where I learned most. What helped me a lot was, I would say, regular touch points where you assess the progress in your journey. Yeah, are you on track? You know, and last but not least, for me it was quite a cool thing to be, I would say, recognized, certified, to have that diploma in hand and to say, you know what, okay, at the end of my journey, you know, I went through it, and that really means a lot to me. And it's almost like a sort of a symbol, a sort of, you know, yeah, I did it. Yeah, and honestly speaking, it gave me that certification also a bit of, yeah, this sort of employability, the attractiveness. I'm a skilled workforce. I'm desired. That was for me, at least, in my personal opinion, a good thing. Yeah, though these 4 or 5 steps. Yeah.
And I guess just to add to that, obviously you mentioned in terms of the period of the apprenticeship, but also from a Daimler perspective and also from the perspective of our dealers and our partners, the key thing to really mention is that it doesn't end after 3 years. Your apprenticeship might end, but your learning journey and your journey within Daimler and within the truck industry doesn't end. And we have a really dedicated training team to ensure that, you know, you may be coming back to this business again, this place again in a different guise as a qualified technician, but learning now advanced skills. And that structure and that support as they move through all of their training really for us is really a key item to focus on. So what, like Heiko said, taking all of those key touch points as we see it through the apprenticeship and pushing that in then into the further environment. We have technicians of 35 years who are still undergoing training courses, and they absolutely will be because the technology changes so fast. We put billions of dollars, billions of euros into our development of our trucks, and it's only right that we do the same for our people.
And I think from a provider perspective, how do we think about what does a good program look like? So we do a number of things. The program is in sort of 3 elements. So we'll do some pre-learning, so that the apprentice will get access to some learning prior to coming in for their block. Then we have the whole block experience, and we'll ask the apprentices at the start of their block how they're getting on in the workplace, because an apprenticeship, 20% of it is learning with a provider, 80% of it is learning with your employer. So for us, it's really important, how are they treated in the workplace? So we always feed back to our employers how the apprentice feels they're being treated in the workplace. That can be really important for young people, can be important for females in an automotive industry. Do they think they're getting the right support in the workplace? So we think it's our duty of care to ask when they come at the start of a block, how are they getting on in the workplace? Because if they're not having a good experience, they're not likely to finish their apprenticeship program. So it is really important that we feed back to the employer how the apprentice views their 80% training in the workplace. And then we'll ask the apprentice what they thought of their whole experience, and we get them to give us a net promoter score. So we genuinely want to know, tell us about your experience, what could we have done differently for you? We tend to find in this type of apprenticeship, they want to spend more time in the workshop and not too much time in class. So we'll get them to give us a net promoter score on their workshop training, their classroom training, and their whole experience. We asked a whole variety of questions. They give us their feedback, and I would say for apprentices, they don't hold back. They'll say exactly how they feel. If it's a great experience, they'll give us that feedback. If it's not, they'll be very clear about what they would like enhanced. We then share that with the employers, so they get to see all of that rich feedback that comes from the apprentices every block. And then at the end of the block, we do an end of block exam to check that they've retained the information at that point, so that they're not not very focused or a lack of concentration. They know that they're going to do an exam at the end of their block, so that helps with they're paying attention all the way through. And then at the end of year one, they'll go through what we call a gateway. So we'll check their ability for their year one learning. They do the same at the end of year two. And at the end of, when they finish their apprenticeship, they're going to go through their endpoint assessment. And in automotive, it's quite rigorous what that endpoint assessment is. So they'll spend a day or two doing an endpoint assessment to check that they are qualified. And going back to your point, Heiko, that when you get your cards at the end of it, you feel great because you've got through your exams, you've got through your practical assessments, and you feel like you've absolutely achieved something. So we see apprentices skipping out the door when they've achieved their endpoint assessment, cannot wait to get on the phone to mum or dad or their employer or their friends to actually say that they've passed. And when they do that, they've walked away with absolutely no debt. They've got a career path, and you just watch, and it's why I work in the industry, you just watch their faces. So when we do endpoints and you watch the apprentices, it's just fantastic. That's why we do what we do.
You mentioned earlier, Sue, around about what we could do for government and if there's anything that's coming down the line that we can see for apprenticeships and any sort of changes or big changes that are going to be coming. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so the industry has what government call trailblazer groups. So what's a trailblazer group? A trailblazer group is a group of employers that work with the further education sector, so they're provider based, to determine what an apprenticeship should look like. Because they should always evolve. We spoke earlier saying technology moves all the time, so the program should move in line with what industry needs. So if you take the HGV sector, we've been working with the Trailblazer Group and government on a 2-year program. So currently all apprentices will go on a 3-year program, but industry actually wants a jump-off point at 2 years for those apprentices that might be doing lots in the way of inspections and more basic training, and not everyone might not want to go on and do the advanced diagnostic type training. So that they want to make sure they've got a point at a 2-year period, and then there's also still a program where everyone that does want to can do diagnostics, as an example. And part of what government are looking at the moment is things like, can there be availability on a foundation apprenticeship program so it gives a young person a bit of time to come into industry and say, do I like working in the automotive industry? Is this for me? Is my mentor going to give me a great experience? Because we all know that they're life-changing, a good mentor. And because 80% of everything that apprentice is going to do is related to that workplace, having an opportunity to almost like try before you buy type approach, where they feel safe, they can come in, they can work on some of the, what I would call the more pastoral sort of areas. How do you bridge from the school system to the workplace? How do you understand how that all works with your communication skills, your teamwork, all the things that you need to learn to go from a school environment into a workplace? So government are working hard to look at what does that foundation look like. Then government are looking at how do the programs change over a period of time. So if a 3-year program's been appropriate previously, but industry says, no, I want a 2-year and then a separate year for those that is applicable, how do we all change so that that's available to people? So I think for us, we don't just deliver training programs. We're really passionate to work with industry and work with government to say, what helps our economy? What does our economy need? And how do we align that training? Something that gets spoken about a lot with the employer base is how do people maximise their levy? And that's a whole a whole different conversation. But employers are contributing into a levy pot to pay for apprenticeships. And they want to be able to maximise that, to use it for their entire workforce to add the most value. And what government are looking at the moment is things like, and they haven't landed on a name yet, but something like, the example I was given was that if you're an electrician and you're fully qualified, but you want to be trained to do solar panels, can you do that additional training on top of your original core training? So the government are looking at that now to see what they could add on, picking up on your point, Richard, earlier, that if you finished your apprenticeship program and you come here to do your advanced technical training, could that be added into that system so that there's a whole career path that people can see from end to end? So that's quite exciting, because government have recognised that employers want to get the best return on their contribution into the name of it's changed now, skills and growth, as opposed to apprenticeship levy. So everything's changing all the time, and government are trying to listen to industry, work with the FE sector, and then transition along a journey of change so that we can give our country what it needs.
Final question for Richard. How does the Maintenance Provision Rating Scheme workshop accreditation contribute to raising professional standards and ensuring job longevity for technicians and apprentices?
So always in this industry, and Heiko alluded to it earlier, safety is a huge concern of ours, simply because of what the products are and what the industry is that we work in. Quality, therefore, of work in our workshops is obviously something that is a huge focus. And we see in other industries, Trustpilot, and we see hygiene, the hygiene rating agency, starting to move down the road of being able to rate various outlets into their quality. And it's a really important thing for consumers, because as myself found out when I found that my takeaway was a 1 out of 5 on the hygiene scheme, quality is really important when it comes down to the provision of services. From a workshop perspective, therefore, Logistics UK announced previously that they would be releasing in April 2025, so soon, the MPRS, or the Maintenance Provision Rating Scheme, to do almost a very similar thing. It's not a scale of 1 to 5, it's a scale of from entry to platinum level in terms of the quality driven by the workshop. And it's been developed in conjunction with the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, so the SMMT, and also the Department for Transport and various other people with regard to the delivery of this. Daimler Truck UK, obviously we are hugely on board with the quality provision, but actually we've been working with Logistics UK for over 2 years. Initially we started with our own audits because we want to really get an outside view, a third-party view of the quality of our outlets. But we're also the first manufacturer to work with Logistics UK to bring this project into fruition. And the aim is that when you're a customer, you'll be able to understand exactly the level of quality that you get from the workshop. From a manufacturer, we would expect that our workshops are also on that scheme, and we want to be able to obviously prove the level of quality that you get when you buy our products. But what it means from an apprentice and what it means from a workshop perspective is that is validated. Your work quality is very much validated, and it really protects and enhances the quality of work and the visibility of the quality of work given. Meaning that when you do your advanced courses and when you provide that service, it's really recognised by not just us but also third parties like Logistics UK, and it's clear for customers when that's given. And that's why when we do our apprenticeships here, all of that work is always done, and you mentioned with regard to new technology, is always done on the latest Daimler Truck technology, because we want that quality to really come through from our apprentices, so when they step into that workshop, they're ready to provide that quality, and we're ready to prove it in the eyes of the MPRS when it comes in April 2025. So I think it's a huge step forwards for us.
And I think the final sort of thought that I've got, if someone was considering an apprenticeship, is choose a great employer, choose the provider well. So if you feel as a parent or an apprentice, don't feel afraid to ask, come and see a training centre, see the resources you're going to get access to. If you're on a HGV training programme and you're being asked to work on cars, it's possibly not the best experience. So check what resources you're going to get access to. And you're going to go on to a programme for 3 years. So if you were going to go and do a degree, you would check what the credibility is of that university and what that degree is going to look like, and you would ask a few more questions. And I would encourage apprentices not to feel afraid to ask for work trials. Go in the workplace and spend some time with the people you're going to work with. Check your employer out, do your research, check your provider out, and check they're a quality provider. and make sure for it to be a great experience, you've checked those things out, and then I don't think you can go on a better training program as long as you get those key ingredients right.